Here is something that has never happened before at a World Cup. Not in 1966. Not in 1998. Not even in Qatar 4 years ago, where men were asked to play football in 40-degree heat in the desert. The referee blows his whistle 22 minutes into the match. Play stops. The crowd boos. The players jog toward the touchline. And at home, in millions of living rooms across the United States, the match cuts away. Not to analysis. Not to a replay. To a car commercial. And somewhere in a broadcasting contract signed months before any of this happened, Fox Sports is collecting between $200,000 and $300,000 for every 30 seconds of that. That is the FIFA hydration break. A 3-minute pause mandated in every single match at this World Cup, regardless of the temperature, regardless of the weather, regardless of whether the game is being played in 35-degree Miami heat or in a sealed, air-conditioned dome in Dallas where it is 68 degrees and the players are breathing recycled air. Every game, every half, like clockwork. FIFA called it a player welfare initiative. The players called it something else entirely. And the weather experts, the coaches, the fans, and the broadcasters who actually know what a 30-second Super Bowl-style ad slot is worth have spent the last 3 weeks calling it exactly what it is. The most expensive commercial break in the history of world football. Start with the official version because it is important to understand what FIFA actually said before understanding why nobody believes it. FIFA introduced mandatory hydration breaks around the 22nd minute of the first half and 67th minute of the second half, framing the decision as a response to weather conditions across Mexico, Canada, and the United States this summer. The justification was player welfare. Heat. The North American summer. The legitimate concern that footballers sprinting in high temperatures without adequate rest could face real health consequences. And that concern is not invented. According to FIFPro, the Global Players Union, 3 games at last year's Club World Cup should have been suspended or postponed due to extreme heat, exceeding the threshold of 28 degrees Celsius on the wet bulb globe temperature gauge. That is a real number with real science behind it. Players do need water in extreme heat. Nobody is arguing otherwise. But here is the problem FIFA built for itself in December. FIFA mandated a hydration break in each half during all World Cup matches, including those played under closed roofs and in colder climates such as Seattle. All matches, regardless of temperature, regardless of conditions. No exceptions. The moment FIFA made it mandatory for every match, including sealed, climate-controlled stadiums where the temperature is set by an air conditioning unit, the player welfare argument collapsed under its own weight. Because you do not mandate a health intervention universally when the health risk is conditional. You apply it when the risk exists. That is what science-based decision-making looks like. What FIFA did instead looks like something else. A weather expert named Everton Fox, a senior meteorologist, was direct about it. New York, California, and Miami have been hot enough, but there's no justification for breaks at the air-conditioned arenas like Dallas, Houston, Atlanta, or Vancouver. I know FIFA claimed to have done this across all games to be consistent, but it's hard to see it as anything other than a commercial venture worth millions of dollars in advertising to US TV channels, if not billions, globally. A commercial venture. That phrase is doing a lot of work in that sentence, and the numbers behind it explain why. A 30-second World Cup advertisement slot on Fox Sports costs between $200,000 and $300,000. Rising as high as $750,000 during USA matches and the later stages of the tournament. In the United States alone, advertising during hydration breaks could generate more than $250 million. $250 million. From a 3-minute pause in the action introduced the same December that FIFA greenlit commercial broadcasters to show ads during those very pauses. The timing of those two decisions, the mandate and the broadcast rights, is not a coincidence. It is a business plan. FIFA's confirmation that commercial broadcasters had been given the green light to show adverts during the hydration breaks came 3 months after the break itself was announced. So the structure was, announce the health initiative, then quietly authorize the monetization of it. First the cover story, then the check. And the people actually playing the matches are not impressed. Virgil van Dijk led the public criticism after the Netherlands' 2-2 draw with Japan was broken up into 4 quarters at the air-conditioned AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. If it's really hot, obviously it will be good to put them in. but I think you have to look at it in every game separately. Canada's Alistair Johnston was more direct. It's probably making some more money for FIFA. Hydration break turned into a commercial break. The words hydration break and commercial break have become interchangeable in conversations around this tournament. Belgium's Yuri Tielmans said, "In some cities it's not that hot, and maybe we shouldn't do it. In a lot of the stadiums which are closed and where it's not too hot, the game stops, and that isn't good for the fans." These are players, the product FIFA is selling, telling anyone who will listen that the breaks are disrupting the sport. That momentum dies when the whistle blows at 22 minutes. That teams with a lead suddenly have 3 minutes to defend it on the training pitch rather than on the actual pitch. That the natural rhythm of football, which has never operated on 4 quarters in its 160-year history, is being repackaged for an American audience already comfortable with commercials every 8 minutes. The breaks have essentially split the game into 4 quarters similar to the NBA or NFL, which is convenient given that the majority of sports fans in the host nation consume their sport in exactly that format. Not convenient. Designed. This is what adapting football for the American broadcast market looks like in practice. And FIFA is selling it as caring for the players. The moment that made it impossible to pretend this was purely about health was the opening match. Mexico versus South Africa. June 12th. The tournament had been running for approximately one half of football. Viewers in the United States were frustrated after broadcaster Fox cut away to full-screen commercials during the second half's hydration break and missed some live action in the process. Live action. Missed. During a break supposedly designed to protect players. Fans watching the opening match of the biggest World Cup in history switched back from their car commercial to find the game had resumed without them. That is the deal FIFA made. That is what $250 million buys. The right to interrupt a live sporting event, not at halftime, not before kickoff, but in the 22nd and 67th minute of a game, and charge $300,000 for 30 seconds of it. The booing started almost immediately. Crowds jeering the referee's whistle at minute 22 has become a growing trend across stadiums, making it one of the defining sounds of this World Cup alongside goal celebrations and VAR reviews. A stadium full of people booing a health break. That is what happens when you sell something as one thing and deliver it as another. There is a version of this where FIFA is not wrong about everything. The breaks are genuinely useful in hot conditions. Managers like Ancelotti and Deschamps have publicly said they welcome the tactical opportunity the pauses provide. Ancelotti credits a halftime hydration adjustment with helping Brazil equalize against Morocco. France manager Deschamps called them valuable for making tactical corrections at a point in the game where verbal instructions from the sideline rarely reach players anyway. The sporting argument for hydration breaks in hot weather is real. The science backs it. The players in Miami and Los Angeles are not complaining. The players in Dallas, in a sealed dome, in 68-degree air conditioning, blowing a whistle at minute 22 because a TV network in New York needs 3 minutes to run a Chevrolet ad. That is a different conversation. FIFA bundled both into one policy. Mandatory. Non-negotiable. Across 104 matches. Because the simplest way to hide a commercial decision inside a health decision is to make sure the health decision applies everywhere. Then nobody can accuse you of doing it for the money in Atlanta if you are also doing it in Miami. The cover requires consistency. And consistency, in the air-conditioned dome in Dallas, in the covered stadium in Vancouver, in 68-degree Seattle, is what gives the game away. But here is the layer underneath the money story that almost nobody is talking about. Because the commercial scandal is the obvious one, the one that writes itself, the one where you just point at the Fox Sports ad and let the number do the work. The harder, more interesting problem with this policy is what it is actually doing to the football. Not the broadcast, not the revenue, the game itself. In 8 of the first 16 games at this World Cup, goals were scored within 10 minutes of a hydration break. 8 out of 16. Half the matches. A goal arriving in the 10 minutes immediately after a 3-minute pause in 50% of games. That is not coincidence. That is a pattern. And the pattern has a name, given to it by people watching this happen in real time. They call them momentum breaks. It's advantageous for the team losing momentum. That's why I call them momentum breaks, one analyst said. When you're on top, you don't want it. When you're losing, you do. Think about what that means in practice. You are a team playing well. You have the tempo. You are pressing high. Your opponent is struggling to get out of their own half. The crowd is building. You can feel something coming. And then the whistle blows. Minute 22. Everything stops. 3 minutes where the other team's coach can reorganize, instruct, reposition, change the shape entirely, while your momentum evaporates on the touchline. The best example of what this looks like in a real match happened at the most important moment of one of this tournament's most celebrated results. Morocco dominated Brazil in New Jersey from the first whistle. They scored just before the first hydration break, leading at the interval. Less than 10 minutes after play resumed, Vinicius Jr. had equalized. Brazil went from chasing the game to level in the 10 minutes directly following the break. A break during which Ancelotti was able to deliver the exact instructions that produced the equalizer. Ancelotti has said as much himself. He credited the break with helping him identify and communicate the tactical adjustment that led directly to the goal. Which is great if you are Carlo Ancelotti. Less great if you are Morocco, who built a lead through 90 minutes of hard work and had it dismantled in the 3 minutes their opponent spent in a huddle on the sideline. Curaçao never recovered after the restart against Germany. They were competing before the break. They could not find their footing after it. Germany, whose manager had 3 minutes to reorganize against a team punching above their weight, used those minutes. The underdogs lost the thread and the score ballooned. The irony is not small. FIFA's stated vision for this expanded World Cup was global football, smaller nations competing, upsets happening, the minnows having their moment. And they introduced a mechanism that systematically advantages the team with the superior coaching staff, the more experienced manager, the better tactical vocabulary. Because 3 minutes with Ancelotti or Deschamps or Nagelsmann is worth infinitely more than 3 minutes with the coach of Panama or Cape Verde or Curaçao. After Panama's loss to Ghana in Toronto, where the temperature was in the low 70s, Panama's head coach Thomas Christensen acknowledged his team used the breaks for corrections, but added, "The weather conditions, it was not hot, but we have to accept that. We have to accept that." From a coach whose team lost partly because a mandatory break handed the advantage to a better-resourced opponent, in weather conditions that required no hydration break at all. And then there is the laptop incident. Because no single image at this World Cup has captured the absurdity of the hydration break more perfectly than what happened during the United States opener. During the Americans' opening match, players gathered around a laptop to review tactics as the hydration break began, only to be told to wait because commercials were still running on the broadcast. Read that again. Players ready. Coach ready. The break is happening. The game is paused. But the commercial is still going. So everyone has to stand around and wait for Fox Sports to finish selling something before the football can have its 3 minutes back. That image, players in their kit, gathered around a laptop, waiting for a car advertisement to end before their coach is allowed to talk to them, is the clearest possible picture of what this policy actually is. It is a broadcast product that happens to contain a football match, not a football match that happens to contain a broadcast. U.S. defender Anthony Robinson said the pauses have been an adjustment. He described it as something players are trying to make work without being given a choice about whether it exists. That is the universal experience at this World Cup. Players adapting to something they did not choose, which was not designed for them, which exists because of a contract signed in a boardroom that none of them sat in. Norway coach Ståle Solbakken pointed out the internal contradiction that FIFA appears not to have noticed. All the other rule changes are designed to speed up the game, he said. But the other things slow down the game, so it speaks against itself. He is precisely right. This is a tournament that introduced a 5-second countdown on goal kicks to stop time wasting. That cracked down on slow substitutions. That mandated players stay off the pitch for a minute after treatment to prevent feigned injuries. All of it designed to increase the tempo, reduce dead time, keep the ball in play for longer. And then, twice per match, the referee blows the whistle and hands 3 minutes of dead time to Fox Sports. The same organization that tightened the clock at the end of matches to increase the amount of football played has introduced 6 guaranteed minutes of stoppage per match where no football is played at all. 6 minutes per game across 104 games is 10 hours and 24 minutes of scheduled non-football at this World Cup. That is the equivalent of almost 2 full matches, gone, before a ball is kicked, written into the broadcast contract. Germany coach Julian Nagelsmann, who won the first break battle against Curaçao, still expressed his reservations. It has a big impact. The coaches can adjust things and change the dynamic. We'll have to adapt well to that. Even the coaches benefiting from it are not convinced it belongs in the game, because they know what they are adapting to is not football. It is football-adjacent entertainment product structured around advertising windows. And here is the part that only matters if you care about football outside the United States. Which, given that this is a global sport watched by billions of people on 6 continents, is rather a lot of people. The hydration break is a commercial opportunity designed for the American broadcast market. Fox Sports is the U.S. rights holder. Fox Sports profits from the ad slots. Fox Sports is the network in whose boardroom this arrangement was, in all practical terms, agreed. But the break happens regardless of which country is broadcasting the match. In the United Kingdom, where ITV and the BBC have covered World Cups for decades, a full commercial cutaway during live football is not normal. It is jarring. British audiences are not accustomed to the game stopping for an advertisement. They watch the break happen on screen, players with water bottles, coaches gesturing, and the broadcast either fills the time with analysis or, in some cases, holds the live feed. In Germany, in Brazil, in India, in Japan, billions of viewers experiencing a 3-minute pause in a football match that their own broadcast infrastructure has no conventional use for, because the pause was not designed for them. It was designed for one broadcaster in one country who paid for the right to fill it. The global football audience is absorbing the consequences of a commercial deal it had no say in. The game it watches is being restructured around a revenue stream it does not benefit from. And the player welfare framing exists to make that restructuring look like a kindness rather than a cash extraction. Here is the question that matters most, and it is not about this tournament. It is about the next one. Because the hydration break, if it generates $250 million in U.S. advertising revenue alone in 2026, is not going away. That number, once established, becomes a line item in every future broadcast negotiation, every future rights deal, every future host city agreement. The precedent is set. The revenue is real. The mechanism exists. And FIFA has shown, repeatedly and without apology, that once a revenue stream is created, it does not get removed. 48 teams instead of 32. 104 matches instead of 64. A private jet between cities to attend matches that generate that revenue. The Club World Cup expanded to 32 teams. The Women's World Cup scheduled in Brazil across enormous distances. Every expansion, every new format, every new rule, follows the same logic. The commercial opportunity comes first. The sporting rationale is written afterward. The hydration break is the cleanest example of that logic in action because the timeline is documented. December, mandatory breaks announced as Player Welfare Initiative. March, commercial broadcast rights to use that time sold to networks. June, $250 million generated in the United States alone. Health, then money. But the money was always the point. And a former World Cup referee who wished to remain unnamed told one outlet something that cuts through all of FIFA's language. He said the day would come when people would look back at the 2026 World Cup and identify the hydration break as the moment the game was formally divided into 4 quarters for television. Not because football needed it, but because American sports television has always worked that way, and FIFA decided that was the format the money required. That day may already be here. The whistle is going to blow at minute 22. The crowd is going to boo. The players are going to jog to the touchline. The coaches are going to huddle and reorganize and adjust. And, in some cases, in the matches where momentum was just building, where an underdog was just starting to believe, that 3-minute pause is going to change the outcome. Fox Sports is going to run a commercial. Someone in a production truck in New York is going to press a button. $300,000 for 30 seconds. And Gianni Infantino, somewhere between his private jet and his next match, is going to call it player welfare. The thumbnail on this video says cash over fans. That is not an opinion. It is $250 million of documented fact, a coaching advantage that systematically benefits the richest teams, and a precedent that will outlast this tournament by decades. The whistle is going to blow at minute 22. The crowd is going to boo. And somewhere in the Fox Sports commercial operation, someone is going to collect. Subscribe for World Cup coverage that follows the money, not the press releases.